Hello and welcome to Matt Mojo, and today we're going to be counting down the top 10 movies I watched for the first time during the month of September 2021. This list won't be strictly limited to movies that were released during the month. It's any movie that I've never seen before that I finally watched for the first time. I won't be including any short films, documentaries, or things I've seen before. Compared to last month, I watched a total of 14 more new movies, so from 23 films to 37. That means less than half of them will make the list, so that's good. Growing up, I was not really a big fan of horror movies. I am an easily frightened person, and I can't even look at pictures of scary things. But I think this is a really good step forward for me overcoming my fears. I didn't find Child's Play scary at all, and more of like the gory slasher flicks of the same genre such as Friday the 13th. I think that's why I liked it, because I wasn't terrified to my bones. Chucky is your classic horror character, and I understand why. I will admit that the first half of the movie is pretty slow, but once Chucky arrives, then it really is exciting. There is a lot of lore that comes with this character, and I understand that now, considering the fact that Chucky just got a new series that I might consider watching in the future. I was trying so desperately to not like this movie, but the twist got me. I remember when I first put it on, I immediately kept thinking this was going to be one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it just kept going and kept getting better. It was weird, not gonna lie, but I didn't mind it. It was a lot more raunchy than I was expecting it to be, sometimes a little too much. Sydney Sweeney was a great lead and a fantastic departure from her performance in The White Lotus. She had a lot more to do here and her acting skills were really put to the test. There were moments that were stupid, both in the derogatory sense and in the brilliant sense. It kept crossing between both lines of being ridiculous and ridiculous, which is weird versatility but memorable. This movie was so campy and so stupid and so fun to watch. When I was really young, I used to have a fear of the Final Destination franchise because I saw a scene from one of the movies of a bridge falling apart and everyone dying. After that, I said I would never watch these movies and I developed a severe fear of bridges, but I overcame my fears just to watch this and I really enjoyed it. It was fun to see how the deaths would go down and just screaming at the characters for making silly little mistakes that would lead to their ultimate demise. The setup was great and the outcomes were great and the product was great. This is not the type of movie you take seriously. Also, the fear of an invisible evil is interesting to watch and allows for the possibility of anything to happen. This one really was heartbreaking. I watched this with my parents and especially at the ending, I looked over at my mother and she was bawling her eyes out. She was crying so much that it got me to start laughing really hard at her out of awkwardness. What happened at the end was really emotional and it wasn't easy to process my emotions fully as to what was going on, but I could tell that the film was full of so much heart and love and compassion from everyone involved. Alicia Vikander does an outstanding job that will truly resonate with me. The little girl who plays the daughter is my parents' favorite and they think that she should be nominated for an Oscar for this performance, and I don't disagree with them. But Justin Chon is a fantastic lead actor, writer, and director. He carries this movie in more ways than one. This meant a lot to me as an Asian American to see such talent being put forward in front of and behind the camera. I have so much faith in Chon to keep making more films in the future and continue to build on his craft. He's talented and I really cannot wait to see him continue to rise. I was not expecting this franchise to be able to keep its momentum, but it surprisingly was able to speed up with its second entry. Final Destination 2 was able to continue the success of the first while also managing to build on the creativity of the deaths and the expanding of the Final Destination lore. Also, it felt like their budget massively improved from the first one, which allowed for more crazy and insane things to happen. Final Destination 2 knows its brand and knows its audience. It embraced the campy aspects to it and took everything even further, which was fun to watch. For someone who is not a fan of horror movies, I sure have a good amount of horror movies on this list. Genuinely, this is the best horror movie of the year, and I might even consider it to be the best horror movie of the century. This movie is so divisive, and I totally understand all the criticisms that it is facing, but I want to take all those criticisms and embrace them for how valid they are and how much they make the movie what it is. I see so many reviews saying how the movie is bad because it's stupid, poorly written, and poorly acted, and to that I say, yes, it exactly is, and that is what makes it special. It is meant to be over the top and insane, and I feel like if you learn to accept that, then you will understand what makes this film so good. Plus, the twist really threw me for a loop. I was on the edge of my seat, screaming at the screen, not because it was scary, but because it was insanely brilliant. I did not see any of the third act coming, and every time I rewatch this film, I have so much fun. Don't be afraid to laugh at the movie. As long as you're enjoying it, then you really understand what makes it so fun. Dear Evan Hansen, take notes. Both Everybody's Talking About Jamie and Dear Evan Hansen encounter the same obstacle. Both feature several songs that are set in pretty static settings that don't have big dances to hype up the scene. Out of the two, Everybody's Talking About Jamie was able to best succeed in these scenarios by giving us something to look at, rather than just different camera angles of the same room of someone singing. Everybody's Talking About Jamie also wasn't afraid to be a musical. It embraced the songs. I was already a fan of the original West End stage show, but this just really blew me away. There are times throughout the film where Jamie wasn't necessarily the best character to root for, but that wasn't too much of a bother. Also, the new song added, called This Was Me, was so heartfelt and heartbreaking, and I really hope that it gets an Oscar nomination because it was a perfect plus for the story. And with the work of art scene, it truly was peak cinema. The black and white mixed with the weird VFX just really hit hard with me and was the most memorable scene of the film, and with the added violins in the background, it really was perfection. I don't normally watch older films, let alone them being able to make it to my top 10, but this one really surprisingly managed to do so. I went into this movie almost completely blind. The only thing I knew going in was the song Le Jazz Hot, because it was wonderfully performed by Chris Colfer on Glee. But this one really blew me away. Victor Victoria is surprisingly able to hold up after all these years, and I am glad I watched it. Leslie Ann Warren was so hilarious to watch, and I can't believe she's also from Clue, one of my favorite movies of all time. That really just blew me away because I wasn't able to recognize her. But the lead, Julie Andrews, she is unbeatable. She has so much charisma and likability about her alongside her graceful talent. She truly is one of the greatest actresses of all time. The story was strong and the messages were brought across so well. The movie was a lot of fun and the music added to that lightheartedness. Truly a classic that should be watched by everyone. The top two of this list were both so strong, it took me forever to decide which one should go where, but I ultimately settled on this. The Eyes of Tammy Faye is a masterpiece of cinema. The only reason it is not 5 stars is because the beginning of the film moves by very quickly and in the blink of an eye they're already famous, but I understand that they needed to do that because there is a lot of ground to cover with her story. This truly is a story that is centered around Tammy Faye more than Jim Bakker, which I think was the right way to go. Jessica Chastain better get that Oscar nomination for her performance because she carried this film like it was nothing. She sold every scene she was in, and this movie wouldn't be what it is without her. Andrew Garfield also does a very good job as well for the scenes that he is in. Going in, I thought he was going to be in the movie a lot more than he was, but it's not Jim Bakker's story being told, so I totally understand. Still, Garfield does excellent with what he is given. The directing was great and managed to keep the story understandable and digestible because of how much happened. The movie also does feel a lot like I, Tonya at times because of the setting and the tone and everything, which is a really good comparison to make because both movies are great. Always bet on Asian. This is genuinely one of the best Marvel movies that has ever been made. Actually, it is the second best Marvel movie in my opinion, with the first being Infinity War, but that is still very good considering a 25 movie lineup to compete against. As much as I love Shang-Chi, the standouts of this movie for me were the women. All of them were outstanding in their roles and funny and awesome to watch. I had such a fun time watching this movie. The 10 rings were so cool to look at in action and their powers seemed totally unmatched. The action was epic and the jokes were extremely funny and landed really well. Again, like Blue Bayou, it was great to feel represented on screen and to see a superhero that looks like me. While watching, my mom kept whispering to me, "That looks like you," which is so funny because that's exactly what I was thinking too. Representation really matters and impacts the way audiences see the movie. Of course, I might be biased because I am Asian and want to support this film like there's no tomorrow, but this is actually such a great movie that everyone should watch. Now onto the speed round of shows and other miscellaneous content that I want to review, but quickly. I didn't really know who Casey Musgraves was, and I didn't listen to her music at all before watching this, but I thought it was fun. The music was really good, but the story was a little confusing, but that's fine. I had no expectations going into this, but I was really pleased with the end result. This musical is beautiful and full of heart and wonderfully written and surprisingly lighthearted. This must have been big competition against Dear Evan Hansen at the Tonys a few years ago. This show was on the same level of Schitt's Creek for me as being one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. The two leads are perfect in their roles and extremely funny, and I like how self-aware it is. No matter how much Paris and Nicole failed, it was so fun to watch them do so. For them to wreak havoc on the small town was just so entertaining to watch. Of course, I watch a show that everyone is talking about and is #1 all over the world, which is totally deserves to be. I was on team All the Women and Ali the entire season. Anyway, those were the top 10 movies I watched for the first time in September 2021. Here you should see my predictions as to what I think will be my top 10 for next month, October, so let's see if I get these right. Here's also a bunch of movies that didn't make the top 10 this month. Some were really good and some were really bad, but you could just check out my letterbox to see my reviews and ratings of those.